My name is Jordan Cram. I'm the CEO of Instoa. We're a systems integrator for capital projects and partner with RPC UK, gold sponsor at the PMO Conference. It was around Christmas time that the RPC leadership team was at our office in New York City. And we showed them this experimental technology that I'm going to show to you all in a few moments. And Mark said, wow, this is great stuff. We were doing a joint pursuit of a very large, well, they call it a giga project in Saudi Arabia. And we had this technology as the part of that overall solution. So when this speaking opportunity came up, Mark and the team reached out. And I'm very glad to be here with you all today. As was alluded to, today is a big day. We're going to unveil a new technology that's been in development for a long time. We see this as an integral member in your project management organizations. To set the stage, I want to talk about this gallery I saw yesterday. This is in Cyprus. I was driving around and felt that I should go look at the birthplace of Aphrodite. En route, I came across this art exhibit that where an artist has erected these frames as a permanent fixture, and the art inside changes. So it's never the same. There's the tide going up, the tide going down, waves, clouds, birds flying through the piece of art. And it was what the artist wanted to do was capture nature without changing the essence of nature. At the same time, working with the limitations of human perception. So as you got near to that frame, it worked in the peripheral vision and allowed you to focus on this changing art. There were many frames. And from a distance, I thought this is, maybe there's not so much to it. But as I got closer and moved through each of these frames, I found it quite a remarkable exhibit and gave me an opportunity for a lot of reflection. So I wanted to take this idea with us today, because essentially what we're going to do is reframe data. We're going to take data and not change its essence, but alter how we perceive it. Take this idea as we glimpse into the future PMO, where data is a key decision partner. We're going to talk about a bot, and I really would like you to envision that bot as a partner in your decisions that you undertake as a PMO. So to that end, let's envision an everyday scenario. It's Monday morning or it's Tuesday morning. An unplanned meeting has just been placed on your diary. The contractor and the project manager, their relationship is somewhat deteriorated. They're in a stalemate, and it's been escalated to you. You have not had time to gather information. You've not had time to either run reports or have someone bring you reports. You are en route to this meeting. What do you do?
Welcome to Instoa Starfish. What can I help you with today?
I'd like a project status.
Which project would you like me to look up?
Kingdom.
Is that the Kingdom Center project?
Yes.
There is a schedule delay associated with the Kingdom Center project, and the finish date has been moved by a month. Can I help you with anything else?
Who is the project manager?
The project manager is Sahahadid, and her contact information is 212-555-1212. Would you like me to connect you?
No.
Okay. Can I help you with anything else?
Latest invoices?
Which vendor would you like me to look up?
El Noor Construction.
The last invoice we have on record for El Noor Construction was submitted 2 months ago. Can I help you with anything else?
What was the amount?
The amount of the invoice was 355,000 Saudi riyals. Can I help you with anything else?
When did it get paid?
It hasn't even paid yet. It is with Akram for approval. Can I help you with that?
Now we are en route. We have a way to get at data in our information systems. It's highly personalized. This is following my own train of thought, my own needs. Now that's a voice interaction. There's also a text-based interaction. So if I don't even have time to make that phone call, I can do that while I'm in the meeting itself. So this is very powerful technology. That's a bot. That's a bot that gets to understand what kind of questions Jordan asks, what projects I'm dealing with on a consistent basis. It can be predictive and make suggestions to me based on things I've not yet anticipated. It is, and this is a bot that we're launching later this month, and I'm so excited about the unparalleled access to the data that it will provide. That's a very mature end state and a powerful end state. There's a lot of foundation that needs to go put in place in order for you all to realize that kind of power in technology, to get data up to the point of helping you as a decision partner. You know, by contrast, if that unplanned meeting pops up on your calendars, you know, next week or in a month or two, you will be on the phone, you'll be trying to interrogate individuals. Those individuals don't have that information at their fingertips. Some might need to log into a system. They might need to run a report, export to Excel, pivot, try to get at this information. Several hours or days later, it's available to you, and the moment's gone. Because in construction, in projects, timing is everything on making decisions. You can make a good decision quickly, but you cannot make a bad decision, a great decision late. So accessibility of the information, and in our research, what we found is that what managers need is it's not complex statistics. It's not everyday use of big charts, big scatter plots. It's actually quite simple data. And it's sitting in systems that you all probably use today. So let's talk about what needs to take place in order to get to this state. Getting to that data is very hard work. It is, and this is not a software demo where I'm going to present to you a mirage, and then you will continually chase that mirage. My belief is that mirage chasers die most of the time because they never actually realize their end state. We don't want that to happen. So we're going to spend a lot of time on basics of things that you need to do. We're going to keep in mind that a lot of data is collected, and that less than 1%, I think it's actually less than 0.5% of that data is used. That means there's a lot of it that's stored, a lot of it that goes without any utility. And I don't believe that is a technology problem. So let's just work from kind of ground up here and look at the PMO data that we're talking about. Structured data, nicely structured data. Cost, by that I mean contracts, financial information, scope, BOQ, BIM, planning, schedule, resourcing. These are data sets that are probably in one or more of your existing tools that on its own is more than enough to provide the kind of analytics that I've presented here today. Now, you're all familiar with data quality, garbage in is garbage out. Even though you may have those systems, you're not gaining the benefit from them. There's other data involved, ancillary data, action trackers, risk registers, document metadata. And then there's this whole world of like big unstructured data. Things like geo information, weather, things like semantic analysis through Twitter or other publicly available information sources. Technologists like to make a big deal over the promise onto this side. My view is we don't yet have our house in order on just the structured data, which holds so much promise. Because at the end of the day, we can have a little bit of data and do a lot with it if it's of high quality, if it's accurate, if it's reliable. There's not much we can do with large amounts of data where the quality is low. So it's about getting at starting with very small bite-sized chunks, structured data, making sure it's quality data, and building from there. And that's exactly what was in that voice demonstration I showed you today. So let's talk about the manager. After the manager, we're going to talk about the leader and how they support this strategic transformation or this journey to quality data that enables technologies like we demonstrated here today. A PMO must put in place a significant foundation before that sort of technology can be realized. It's essential, and it's kind of the boring stuff. It involves rigor, discipline, organization, process, and people. Now, who really likes rigor? You know, we've been around 11 years, our company. My staff, they didn't really particularly like rigor day one. They still don't like rigor. I have a 10-year-old and an 8-year-old, both boys. They don't like rigor. They don't like brushing their teeth every night. They don't like doing their math tables. They don't like updating their reading diaries. And they certainly don't like the discipline of going to bed on time. No one likes rigor outright. And we're just kids in grown-up bodies. But we learn that by applying that rigor and that discipline, we're able to gain a future benefit. It isn't fun, but without it, I would submit nothing of serious impact can be achieved. That's discipline and rigor. Before you can expect discipline, you do need to define processes. Processes should be simple, otherwise they simply can't be remembered. A lot of PMO practitioners are engineers. There is a emphasis on process. That's nothing new. There's a lot of it at this conference today. My particular spin on it is that they need to be simple. You have to strive consistently to allow those processes to be simple. Otherwise, they cannot be remembered. So do you have a process? Has it been documented? More importantly, do people know it? And I would say most importantly, do people know why it adds value? You know, we're in a generation of worker where people need to know what's the value behind what am I doing. I'm not going to do this process because you, boss, told me to do it. They have to know it adds. They need to know where it adds value, and you have to communicate that to them where it adds value for them in order for them to adhere to it. If you are able to make that connection, then you're able to support the kind of rigor and the discipline to arrive at that quality data. If we take one step back further on the organization, believe we are in a transition of organizational models from old to something new, and in as fast as 5 years or maybe even 10 years, many organizations, even project management organizations, are going to be structured radically differently. Divisional matrix, divisional structures, functional structures, matrix type organizations are going to start to fade away. They're going to be replaced by things like plutocracies, holacracies, unstructured, more self-organizing organizational models. Now that may sound like it's loosey-goosey. I would suggest that even in those, discipline's more important than it is in the older command and control type structures. So on organization, do people know your organization, what it is, what the roles are? This is not about publishing an org chart. As I mentioned, Instoa is 11 years old. We've never published an org chart. We feared that by putting a person in a box, they would concentrate too much on what they were not supposed to do. And so we wanted to just leave that somewhat ambiguous. But we gave enough information so that people knew where they were, what their job was, who their lead was. Now, we're a systems integrator, and we do a lot of work in America, and we do about 1/3 of our business outside of America. That's changed from Australia to start UK, Australia, Middle East, China, and now a big surge for us in Saudi Arabia. We've had to be highly adaptable, and so having a fixed structure worked against our strategy, which essentially was to chase growth opportunities on the global scene. The question on organization is, do people thrive in it or do they die in it? And can your organizational model adapt? There is an excellent way to test discipline with your team by running, like the military does, a change in formation unexpectedly. Walk in Monday morning, roll out a wholly new organizational structure, and see what happens. If you have a disciplined group, within a couple of days, they'll settle into those new roles, and they'll be back to business. If it is 3 or 4 weeks of chaos, it means you have an underlying lack of discipline that requires focus. Again, I'm going into that because it's about structured data and quality data and what the manager can do to help support the rigor necessary to realize those benefits. I was a story about actually my first job after graduating university was I was working for a general contractor. It was in Colorado. That's where I'm from originally. It was a microfab plant. So they made chips where the liquidated damages are in the hundreds of thousands by hour. So it was a very intense environment, and this general contractor had a superstar superintendent on it. His name was John Pohl. John made it happen. John was an older gentleman, probably in his early 60s. John made no excuses. John worked long, hard hours, and nobody messed with John. John used to come into the trailer, and he would call me a paper pusher. I was a project engineer. I pushed around paper, submittal drawings, RFIs, change orders. John said I didn't know construction. You know, I'm like 22 years old, so I am struggling with this, critique of what I've learned. I have a bachelor's in architectural engineering with an emphasis on construction. I had worked as an intern in my uncle's architectural firm. I had a father who was the CEO of CRSS Constructors, who got bought by Jacobs. He finished his career as a crisis manager for Jacobs. I had summer jobs building houses as a carpenter. So when John would come in and say, Jordan, you don't know construction, you're a paper pusher, I got really offended. And so I had an idea of how I was going to prove John wrong. And I said, John, how about I join your concrete crews on Saturdays and Sundays? And he took me up on the offer. And for the next several weeks, I enlisted as a tradesman on his concrete crews. And there I really learned what a gifted leader can do, who can take a team of people and transform them into a tight, focused group with discipline in a matter of moments, with just a speech, with just a simple strategy. I don't think John had a college degree. I don't think he went to university. And I'm sure he was born with some of these traits. But really, John learned that over several decades of just hard experience and failure upon failure. So what he would do is, we were laying duct bank, and John, I'll tell you in hindsight, what I learned is that he would call the concrete trucks to be delivered 15 minutes before he told the crew they would arrive. And you can't leave concrete sitting in a truck for more than 30 or 45 minutes. So as people would begin to hear that truck work its way up the mountainside, they'd get about a 15-minute warning. And the pace of forming would just increase at an exponential rate. Now, we would make it in time. In other words, meeting the milestone 15 minutes ahead of time. We'd get a little bit of break, and we're off to the other duct bank, where John had done the same thing again. And it was amazing, these little techniques that he employed to maximize productivity and to continually reinforce a well-functioning team and discipline. So it's a story about what can be achieved with that kind of discipline. It's not fun, but again, nothing can be achieved without it. With data, I've found that it can be a very useful manager tool to as a litmus test. How rigorous is your team? Do they dot I's? Do they cross T's? At Instoa, resources is our main thing. It's people. So tracking time is really important. And the data on that is another way that we help keep everything in shape. So let's switch to the leader. As was mentioned this morning, I travel a lot. So over the last 4 months, I've been in Riyadh, I've been in Kuwait, I've been in Bangalore, I've been in Lviv, Ukraine, I've been in Munich. I've been a lot of places. I get exposed to a lot of leaders and leader visions. And as a systems integrator, we're called in to deliver on the promise of technology and data. And the thing I find that sets it back most frequently is a lack of a vision that has been clearly communicated. It's not that there's a lack of a vision. Leaders, and when I say leaders, I don't necessarily mean CEO. I mean a leader of a team is a leader. They may have an idea in their mind and start to act on that vision. But if it's not been communicated out to the rest of the team, then everyone has to fill in the void, and they always fill in the void differently than that leader intends. With the leader, to arrive at this promise of data, it is about managing change strategically, having a vision and facilitating that change. There's, we started our business believing that tech and data on its own was just going to make everything great. And over the last several years, we've continued to build out other capabilities in the area of management consulting, training, and change management, organizational change management. Scaffolding individuals, managing stakeholders, running communication programs. And we have, after realizing that technology on its own can't deliver on that strategic change, we've come back to some core, I would call them tech-enabled management consulting services to make that happen. And one of the things we will do is work with a leader, help them articulate onto paper, both visually and verbally, what their vision is, and then go out and evangelize that. There would be some research done on this. I don't have it with me now, but if the majority of the individuals don't understand what that leader's vision is, especially as it pertains to data and systems, then you'll end up like that mirage chaser, dead in the desert. And again, I find this the kind of the root of all failed transformations. There was a spark and the spark is right, and it's in a small group of people's minds. It wasn't communicated out effectively to the broader team, either stakeholders up above or team down below or peers on either side. And for that reason, people made up their own mind what that vision was about and how to achieve it. So that's dealt with training, change management. And if you are to reach that state of data really enabling your PMO, what I think is the future PMO, then you cannot be a leader who has a vision, acts on the vision, but the team lacks understanding of what to do. So what do I mean by a bot anyway? What was that thing on the phone that I called into? A bot is a smartly designed user experience. It's personalized to the individual. It relies on analytics, more importantly, machine learning. The reason machine learning is so that it can learn from the interactions and begin to fill in the voids that exist with just a pure analytics approach. I'll draw a contrast to a dashboard. Everyone's got dashboards, right? Dashboard is like a one-size-fits-all. It might have a scatter plot, a pie chart, a line graph, and there might be 10 or 20 consumers of that dashboard. And I'll tell you why it's a failed means of communication, because it is susceptible to the interpretation of those 10 or 20 people. A dashboard is a lot like that art exhibit I showed you from Cyprus. Individuals interpret it differently. To some people, the different shade of red means something different. They bring their own experiences into it. So a dashboard is a one-size-fits-all. By contrast, a bot learns the way you most effectively understand and communicate. It's personalized. So it's that user experience, UX. It also scaffolds. It shores up human weakness in terms of forgetfulness and bias. So we all remember, last week pretty well. We remember last month, yeah, okay, 1 or 2 years out, we begin to forget pretty fast. If we're in the projects business, our memory is dominated by probably a few very impactful projects, but the others that were less impactful, for whatever reason, They occur to us in some stage of life when we were too busy, maybe with 8 and 10-year-olds. But they were forgetful. A bot doesn't forget. It's got a big data set. It can scan. It can analyze. Again, it can understand what types of questions you are typically asking. It can begin to anticipate those questions and prompt you for others that are outside of that repetitive question stream that you might typically do. The other part of a bot that is so important is that it can counteract bias. It has no prejudice, right? It's not born with anything other than what we program into it. And just like diversity being such an important part of any team, you get different perspectives. You know, a team with low diversity can move very fast because groupthink is very efficient at making quick decisions, and a diverse set of people around a decision table can take a long time. It can be real painful and slow. But research does show those diverse teams consistently outperform those that are not. And that's the way a bot can act as well. We use a bot, for example, when we recruit, that we scan resumes, we do interviews with candidates, and then we have the candidate take a set of surveys, and a bot tells us where that person should fit in our organization. And sometimes it's consistent with how we've perceived it. Sometimes it's very different. And we may override the information coming through from the bot, but what it does is it represents a different perspective. Another story, again, early in my career, is that this is while I was an intern. I was in Oregon working with Bovis, now Lend-Lease, and I had a project manager who came to me once and he said, "Jordan, you seem to be getting along with the superintendent, the secretary, and the lead project engineer." He says, "I haven't seen anybody do that before because these three are very different, and so you must be personalizing your communication with the three of them." Now, Steve he had a talent for finding useful talents and assembling them together in a team. That's a clear leadership trait. And I'm grateful for Steve because he highlighted to me early in my career the importance of that personalization that subsequently we have taken to our approach of data and has now been enabled by technologies like machine learning, like mobile devices, to tailor it to individuals. And that's what I'm saying that reports and dashboards can't do. They say one thing and are highly susceptible to individual interpretation. And like art, that interpretation is different for each individual person. So the bot is that decision partner. So let's just check back in with our unplanned meeting.
Welcome to Untitled Chapter. What can I help you with today?
Did the Peer Foundation change order get approved?
Do you mean change order number 034? New pier design by Honor Construction, dated November 13th, 2017.
Yes.
It was approved on January 15th, 2018 for the amount of 37,400 Saudi riyals. Can I help you with anything else?
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you and have a great day.
That's even a nice bot. Again, so we've taken a long journey through fundamentals and we might call them boring topics. That technology is awesome. And I've only just shown you there the parts that are answering very simple questions. When is the design milestone? Is it late? Who last updated it? Has the contract been approved? What is the amount? How many change orders? Really basic questions. What it can also do is say, Jordan, what do you think is the status of that project? And I can put in my, and I can give it my point of view, and then that goes back into the database to update. It's very fast, it's very natural. It is done as a part of your day job, not something where you go at the end of the day, type a bunch of stuff into a system. It can also then rely on predictive information. Jordan, we think that on Project Kingdom that the equipment will be delayed because it's run correlations, it's run an analysis. All of that is based on quality, structured data that needs good old-fashioned management techniques, a leader vision that can be and should be enabled themselves with technology. And just to close on the premise that bots are really important decision partners that we believe the future PMO needs sitting around the table in order for them to mitigate blind spots, shore up human forgetfulness, and neutralize bias. So we've got a few minutes, and I would love to take questions.
So in terms of any questions, do make sure that you actually put the microphone somewhere near your mouth, not down there. Nobody can hear you if you do that.
So in what sort of database do you currently have the data that the bot accesses?
I'm going to scoot back to this simple data structure here. So it's a relational SQL or Oracle database. Was that the question?
Yeah. One, let's say, which software, and then also how do you input it?
Okay, so this thing in the middle, which is that data warehouse that feeds the bot analytics, is fed by sources. So maybe I go over here. On the left, on cost, there's going to be various cost tools where estimates are captured, budgets captured, contracts. And that can vary. I mean, this is the work that RPC and Instoa do, is we would work with those existing tools, or we would put in place new tools to capture that information. Scope could be Revit. That information, it would ingest it would ingest the attributes of the Revit file into that database, and then schedule and resources. It would ingest data from, could be SharePoint that has these ancillary trackers. And I'll kind of leave that part out of it for now. I guess I didn't really answer how does it get entered.
Is it as simple as can I take an Excel spreadsheet and that gets imported into the data warehouse where the bot analyzes it?
It can. Yep. Very succinct. And that is a good way to vet your process, actually, is to stay in Excel, but eventually you will want to get out of Excel because you'll need to scale the process, and Excel can't scale. So I think it's good to start there, test, tweak your process. Once you think you've got it there, then you need to go into some structured tool where you can enforce controls.
Okay, I think I have one down the front and then some up the back there.
Yeah, hi. You mentioned how the bot can learn to personalize the experience for the person asking the question. How does the bot learn to assess the inputs? So it will learn that you want to know about certain project, but certain project manager is telling it bullshit. The bot is going to faithfully tell you as you go into that meeting that everything's fine with the contractor and so on, because that's what the project manager told the bot. How do you get over that, other than by your discipline piece you talked about in the management bit? Everybody will do a great job, and then the bot will be good.
Okay, how do we get around, I guess, someone, in that case, giving a false status, right?
It's your ego.
Yeah, okay. So back on the structured side, so this is tracking things like the contract, the BOQ, the invoices, how long are invoices being paid, how many change orders are queued up for a given contractor. You can, without talking to a person, you can ascertain the behaviors pretty effectively, just based on data. Now that could be like, let's just say you don't receive one pay rec per month, you receive 4 pay recs in 1 month for the previous 4 months. That's an indication of behavior. So the analytics or the bot itself can get very close to behavioral patterns of individuals before it relies on any input. The other thing it would do is it would not ask just a single project manager for their opinion on, say, when the design deliverable will be submitted. It would ask that of other people as well, and maybe individuals that aren't directly associated with it. So it will triangulate. Because the bot has huge reach. You know, it's like I have, let's say, 10, 12 hours a day. I can only talk to so many people. Whereas a bot can have a extended reach and ask that kind of question to many people in slightly different ways. So that's what it would do. That's how it would flush out that perhaps intentional or unintentional misinformation.
Okay, another one over here.
Hi, I'm afraid I'm going to go a slight tangent.
Sure.
You mentioned the word holocracy. Any tips on transitioning a command and control organization to a holocracy?
Oh, what a brilliant question. Holocracies are coming. Let's all get ready for them. I guess is my general belief. You have to start to shock your org safely, and you might need a 2-year plan, but you have to act right now, because it is going away, and those functional structures, command and control structures, what's going to happen? You will not be able to recruit or retain people, or you will be moving too slow and you cannot respond to crisis. Because when I started my career, early 90s, the business cycle was still kind of like 5 years. I'd heard before it was even longer. Right now, it's quarterly. If you just extend that, it's going to be monthly, and then it's going to be weekly. A top-down or command and control structure simply cannot respond to it. So businesses are going to go through those same kind of transformations that the military went through when they broke down their big structures. So you need to put a plan together, get your lieutenants on board with it. It might take 2 years, but you have to start shocking it. And you're going to lose people. They are going to see that change as even with the best communications, they're going to say their leader has lost his or her mind. And you are going to lose people. Maybe it's 10% of the staff. Maybe it's 20. But if you don't do it, you will, you're going to lose a lot more people, or you won't be able to retain, or you won't be able to attract people. So did that answer the question? I mean, I guess give you enough to go on?
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. Now, technology can help there also. Data can. the way we did it is that we've got attribute data on individuals, who likes structure, who abhors structure. We share that data with the individual and with everybody. And so we do allow them, eventually we've gotten to a point where we allow them to self-form teams. There's a lot more behind that. Thank you for that question.
Hi. So actually moving nicely on from that one. So your view on the future of organisations is quite clear. Holacracy, people working in kind of sort of hippie commune things where everyone's self-organising themselves and doing amazing self-organising things. If that's your view of the future, how are you balancing that view with the fact that your company is investing in a bot that is heavily reliant on a core of highly structured company data? I don't get how you're relying on that company structured data when the organisation of the future is going to be massively unstructured. Can you explain how that one works?
And can you do it in a couple of minutes because we need to wrap up?
Okay, I'll go for less than a minute.
Excellent.
So when you go with those unstructured models, you can see why I made so much about rigor and discipline and quality of data, because you require it, but you don't have this kind of hierarchy that you've historically relied on. So you have to come up with new techniques and different techniques, but it's, I would suggest, more important in those unstructured, in those looser team structures than in a more traditional command and control. I mean, we could share with you those techniques, but it's, in some sense, in the older structures, it is optional because the boss can still just tell someone what to do. But in those more fluid structures, it's not optional. So it becomes a more critical, and I would say strategic asset to the organization to get the data structured and to ensure the quality is there.